we're doing is we are discussing this novel of Sartre. So Colin and I will get through as much as we can in about 45 minutes to an hour. We are in the middle of chapter 8, I think, and then we'll open it up for discussion. But so Colin, what have you been up to this week, just to kind of catch up and start things off before we talk about the reading?
I read No Exit this week. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, like all the plays or like just that specific play?
I read all of No Exit. I am in the middle of the one about Orestes.
Yes.
And Zeus. Yeah.
Yeah, that one is great. What are you thinking of it so far?
I mean, I think it's great. I mean, No Exit's fascinating though. I was struck by the fact that it's like like The Age of Reason, it also involves what to do with an unwanted pregnancy.
Okay, you're gonna have to remind me.
So like, I mean, also, hi Karen, if you're listening. So No Exits. It's about 3 people in hell, and I think part of the journey of the play is trying to figure out why they're in hell, because they all are lying through their teeth. But one of them, so it's 3 people, Garçon, Estelle, and Inez. And Estelle is a youngish woman, I guess. And it turns out she committed infanticide. She drowned her baby.
That's right. Oh my gosh, that's horrible. That's horrifying. Right. And yeah, they each have kind of like these desires about, I think like Garçon wants to just like, he's worried that he's a coward, right. and so he never like did the thing that he needed to do for his own freedom. And then I can't remember what Inez's deal was.
I mean, and yeah, that's your question. I'm not quite sure I know what all 3 of their deals are, but yes, Garçon is definitely a coward. Inez is cruel, so it sounds like she's a lesbian, and she kind of bullied a woman to leave her husband, and was then teased, and then the man died. Her husband died, and she teased her husband. She teased the woman that it was their fault that they killed him, and then, if I'm understanding correctly, and then the woman did a murder-suicide. So, yeah, I think she's cruel. I'm not positive though. I mean, she's definitely cruel. I think that's why she's in hell.
Yeah, and she's also, I think that's a really good articulation, because she's kind of also bullying Estelle, and kind of frustrated that Estelle is trying to seduce Garçon, who doesn't really want to be seduced. So I guess she's kind of frustrated, maybe in the same way that Sartre writes Daniel in L'Âge de Raison, because he's also kind of frustrated in being like, I guess, the minority in a very hetero world, where he has to, figure out, even in like chapter 8, what we're going to talk about today, I think, or maybe it's chapter 9, but when he sees Boris in that bookstore where Boris is about to like steal a thesaurus or something.
Right. That's a very weird chapter.
Yeah, it is. And he gets kind of frustrated because he kind of gets rejected by Boris, but he's frustrated in that chapter with that rejection, because he kind of starts blaming Mathieu, because Mathieu, in a sense, has control over, or has captured the affections and attentions of his younger male students in a way that like Daniel would enjoy, and he kind of has contempt for Mathieu for being, I guess, a straight man who nevertheless gets to enjoy what you know, a gay man doesn't in that society. And then Inez is just frustrated because, you know, like it's hard, I guess, if you are into women and then the majority of women are into men, you know. And so it's just the plight of I guess, the homosexual via Sartre's perspective.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I mean, I do get this sense that they both. Wow, can you hear the drilling or whatever that is, the sawing, or no?
I can hear it, but it's not like a problem. Okay. Like it's not like yeah.
Okay, good, because it's really loud for me, but I'll be fine. I think they're working in our yard, but yeah. What was I gonna say? Yeah, I think that's right. I think yeah, so I'll just so there's parallels between Inez and Daniel, and maybe somewhat between Estelle and Marcelle.
Yeah.
So Estelle's more of Estelle, just because, but like Marcelle wants to keep the pregnant. I mean, so both have the issue that they got pregnant without planning, and Marcelle evidently ultimately wants to keep the baby, whereas Estelle, in No Exit, does not, and is a psychopath and drowns the baby, which is horrible.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, that's now that you're kind of, because, yeah, I've read it recently. I read that because I just finished actually all the plays not too long ago. And, yeah. It's pretty complicated. You know, their psychologies and their stories are complicated. But I know, like, reading the letters, which you just bought. You said you have 2 books of Sartre's letters?
Which ones did you have? What do you have?
Yeah, I don't know how many there are, and that's what I was going to ask you. So I'm currently reading Quiet Moments in a War, which is basically his letters from 1940 to 1963. But I also have Witness to My Life, which I haven't started, but that's I guess that's earlier letters.
So I just got both of them, and I'm maybe 50 pages into Witness to My Life. Yeah.
Okay, how cool. Yeah, it is so cool reading his, because at least in Quiet Moments of the War, so I guess in Witness to My Life as well, since you sent me those 2 screenshots, which thank you, that's so cool. I didn't know that he was basing, like, basically all of his main characters on people that he knew. That's wild to me. It's like, who is Mathieu, or no, who is Daniel in real life?
Yeah, I want to too.
Like, that's terrifying.
Like, what poor bastard got, like... Who are the sociopaths and the psychopaths in Sartre's life?
Right? Like, is that a colleague, or who is that? Like, so interesting that Brunet, I think I read that he's based off of Paul Nizan, who was like Beauvoir's lover for a while.
Oh, I didn't know that. That's interesting.
Yeah, well, I think that's in the screenshot that you sent me, but so maybe I'm wrong. I don't know.
No, you're right about that. I forgot. I'm sure, but I didn't realize about the lover thing.
Oh yeah. I don't remember if he was. I think maybe he was American, and she would, like, kind of late in life, in her career, or in the letters, I guess. Like, she stayed at his house somewhere in, like,
I think you're getting 2 people confused.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I think maybe actually Kieran would probably know better than either, or Apple would know probably better than either of us, actually.
Okay, yeah, maybe I'll have to look at your...
I remember that there's, like, Paul Nizan was, like, a friend of Sartre's, and, like, he was killed, I think, in the war. I know he was a friend of Merleau-Ponty's also, and I think they both write very fondly about him, and kind of, like, it's definitely one of those, you know, when you read their stuff from after the war, it's, like, one of those moments where you can, like, see the, you know, the time of their philosophical writing, like, drifting in the situation really clearly.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, maybe the names are similar. I just thought that was the same person. I don't know.
I think you're right.
I'll have to look back through Beauvoir's, through her her letters to herself. But anyway, that's so interesting.
Yep.
There was, I am reading Existentialism is a Humanism, which
cool.
I know you've read, and I thought it was interesting because he talks about how their fiction is criticized. It says that in light of, if people criticize our works of fiction in which we describe characters who are spineless, weak, cowardly, and sometimes even frankly evil, it is not just because these characters are spineless, weak, cowardly, or evil. For if, like Zola, we were to blame their behavior on their heredity or environmental influences, their society, or factors of an organic or psychological nature, people would be reassured. So he's basically saying that existentialist characters, and I think this is probably the same with like Camus and The Stranger, that readers dislike them and are unnerved because there isn't a good reason for why they are the way they are. I don't know. I thought that was interesting. What do you think about that in Sartre's explanation?
I think it's fascinating. I mean, the Zola thing is very interesting because, that was, the Zola remark is very interesting because, I have not read any Zola, but I did read a lot about Cézanne and Zola, and we saw the movie, yes. Which was very entertaining. And
so great.
Yeah, it's really funny you've seen it. But, that was my understanding is that was Zola's goal, to show how, he believed in psychologism and to show how human beings' psychology is determined by, Darwinism and their situation in society, etc. So he saw himself, again, this is my understanding, as doing, kind of writing fiction inspired by cutting edge science of the 1860s or whatever.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah, I haven't read Zola yet either. I have a few of his novels, but I just thought that I think someone commented on my Instagram because I was, talking about the relationship between Beauvoir and then the female student lovers that she is writing about, and someone mentioned that there was like a contentious relationship between, this artist and writer, and so I was like, oh, I have to check it out because I love like the relationships behind the writings.
Definitely.
Yeah. Well, how interesting. All right. Well, should we?
But then for Sartre, obviously it's all about freedom. You aren't determined by your psychology or your past or anything. So it would make sense that he would see Zola as his arch nemesis in terms of, or his polar opposite in terms of how he's thinking about writing. Because Sartre's characters are intended to be free, and they're not intended to be determined.
Oh, right.
By their psychology and Darwinism.
That's such a good point. Yeah, Sartre always, he never fails to kind of show his disregard for psychology. And I guess that's why he sees it as deterministic. That's so interesting. Wow. Well, I think that's great that you got his letters, and you'll have to tell me if he says anything more about the novel. It's so cool to I don't know, read it in progress, but.
Yeah, cool. Awesome. And see too, I'll be curious to hear what the later volume is like.
Yeah, well, I guess just one more comment on my end. I was so interested and surprised that he had planned this whole prologue of writing about Yvitch, Marcelle, and Mathieu 10 years before the setting or the novel happens, to show Yvitch's childhood, and I guess to explain what was happening, and then just to kind of see what Mathieu was like. I guess Beauvoir didn't really like the prologue, so he kind of didn't publish it, but I would love to read that draft.
That sounds fascinating. Where is that? Where did you read about that?
I read about that was in Quiet Moments of the War. That was he mentions that when he's writing about Yvitch as I guess a 7-year-old, because she's 17 in L'Âge de Raison, he says it's in the general genres of atrocities veiled by the charm of childhood. So he's going to talk about he was in the prologue going to talk about how, like, she, I guess as a child, like, she slept in her parents' bed and that, like, messed her up, which, I don't know, now that I'm, like, thinking about it, that just sounds like...
really weird.
Like, well, yeah, weird, but explaining someone's behavior by their psychology. Like, by their childhood, like, that sounds deterministic. But maybe that's our goal in being free, that we have to realize that we're not trapped by our past.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely true. Yeah.
Interesting.
I mean, because, Sartre does have this existential psychoanalysis.
Yes. Yeah.
But I think it only works retrospectively.
Oh, okay.
But I'm not sure.
Yeah, I mean, because that's what psychologists are trying to do as well. Like, when you think about, like, Freud or just whoever, it's like, that's what heals you, to get out of, to recognize how you're affected by your past and how these neuroticisms have been formed because you, like, keep cycling back to them in adulthood, and to, like, transcend your past. Isn't that, like, the basis of, like, Freudian psychology and, like, even therapy today, to, like, recognize what's holding you back and to transcend it, to be in your own freedom and make your choices about who you are?
Sounds good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, but you do have drives for in Freud, don't you?
Oh, that's right.
Determine how you act. That push you. Like, you have, I don't remember the drives, like the sex drive, the death drive. I don't know all the drives. That push you towards certain ends.
Right. I mean, I guess, yeah, like you were saying, like, biological determinism, you can't really separate yourself from your, evolved animal nature and your instincts. You can only kind of tame them. I guess it also sounds kind of Platonic to me, right? Like the chariot and, like, the untamed horse that the tamed horse needs to put in line.
Yeah.
Huh. Interesting. Yeah, that would be really cool to, like, read some kind of academic secondary literature on, like, the existential psychology of Sartre.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think I said this, but, like, the last, like, 100 pages of Being Nothingness is about that.
Oh, okay.
But it is the last 100 pages.
Yeah, I'm still on, like, page 230.
It's really easy. I gotta say, I meant to warn you, like, the temporality section is one of the easiest places to stall out.
Oh, okay. Yeah. No, I mean, I'm working on it, but sometimes it's, I don't know.
It's a tough book. It's a tough
read
book.
It more.
It's a tough. I just think that it's fascinating how much, like, I really like reading Sartre's fiction, and I also really enjoy his short essays. But, like, Being Nothingness is a slog. Like, it's fascinating. It has a lot of great stuff in it, but it's such a hard read, and it's so dense compared to everything else, to, like, his more popular writings.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's very dense. That's why, like, sometimes I'm taking 2 hours to read, like, 15 pages or even less, because it's like I'm making notes and I'm underlining, and then, some parts I just don't understand at all. And so it's like, I'm like, I'm going to circle back to that when I'm, like, in a year or so.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, but yeah, you're right. It is nice that he has written in so many different genres. Like, I'm reading The Wall right now, like his short stories, and they are amazing. I mean, I thought his plays were great, but he is a master at this short story genre. Or I don't know, from my perspective, it's like these are just so well written. His characters are so interesting, and it just really brings home to me what existential literature could be.
Really?
Yeah, definitely. I don't know if you've read the contemporary short story writer Tal Lin. He has, like, a collection of short stories called Bed.
No, I haven't.
Okay, I would recommend that to you, because that's kind of I read him before I read the existential literature of Sartre, and that helped me understand what it is, and I see a connection between them for sure, and, like, just the almost, like, nonsensical ways that the characters, or, like, the almost, like, the absurdity in the the characters. I don't know. You'll maybe. I think I have like maybe like a short story of his that I can just send you, like, so you can read it for free.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. I would definitely check that out.
Yeah, he's so interesting. But I would definitely recommend the short stories because there's this story about this woman who is married to, I guess her husband is a schizophrenic. And so, but he's like on the slow descent to really being a problem in his life, and I guess there's no treatment for it or something at this time. And her father is trying to say, like, you are smart, you're intelligent, you don't get dragged down by this illness. And then, and she in her own interiority is just feeling like, well, my husband's the only one I understand, and I want to think like he thinks. And she tries to like be involved in his delusions and, the paranoid delusions that he has about people coming to like, attack him in his room. And she like closes her eyes and she's like, I can almost feel them. Yes, I can feel them against my, my flesh or my arm or something. And yeah, it's just like a weird, slow descent herself into her own like strange desires. And I don't know, but it's just like, it blew my mind. I was like, damn, he is a good writer, like a good fiction short story writer. It's blowing my mind. Yeah, for sure.
That's terrifying.
Yeah, no, it is. It's really disturbing.
You're like, I mean, yeah, I have wondered in the past if I've like made myself sick because someone around me is sick, but like to descend into madness so like sympathetically.
Yeah, I know. It's like she's still so like attracted to him, and I don't know. Yeah, it's really interesting, and all of the stories are
yeah.
Good.
If you send it to me, I'll read it. If you have a copy.
Okay.
You can send it to me. Yeah, that's fascinating.
For sure.
Somewhat terrifying, honestly. Jesus.
Yeah. No, but it's like lovely. So.
Anyway.
So anyway, should we move on to
the...
Okay, cool. Cool. Oh, I think we lost Apple. I hope she comes back.
Yeah, where's Apple? She should come back.
Yeah. Okay, so I think that I went through the part about Jacques, but then there's still in chapter 8, if you wanted to go over it and you wanted to do it. I think the next part is about Marcelle, and then there's also a part about Boris and Brunet at Mathieu's apartment. So I don't know what you want to go over, but that's the rest of chapter 8.
Yeah, chapter 8 is probably, I think, is by far the longest chapter.
Yeah. I think the Marcelle part starts like on page 141, if you need like a reference.
I do, yes. I actually have not read this in a while, so.
Yeah.
Right, okay. Do you want to talk about the Marcelle thing while I remind myself what they talk about here?
Yeah, sure. I can throw out some quotes for you to kind of remember. So Marcelle basically, so Mathieu is calling Marcelle in this part to discuss the abortion doctor and Price. Also, like, I think that's it. And then, like, I wrote down the quote on page 143. A woman who says that hasn't the right to switch over to the sentimental view, that surely would be an abuse of confidence, and Marcelle is capable of that, she would have told me. So I think that's Mathieu, like, kind of contemplating. He's kind of struggling because I think maybe part of him knows that, or is afraid that Marcelle, like, wants to really, like, talk about this instead of, like, he already deciding that he's gonna, like, find the abortion doctor. And so my question with that was, can Mathieu expect more of others than he gives? Can we truly know one another? Because he's basically complaining because like she's changing her mind, and she should have talked to him. But we have said in the past that Mathieu doesn't have full disclosure, like doesn't tell everyone straightforwardly what he thinks.
Yeah, that's right. So, Mathieu is definitely not open with his thoughts. he's very closed. He just makes decisions and acts on them. I mean, frequently he doesn't make decisions, but he doesn't ask for other people's input. He's not going to talk things over. But what was your question? I think I missed the
idea. I was, I guess from one perspective, I could feel that, well, Marcelle could be more open and Mathieu could be more open.
Yeah.
But, ultimately, can we truly know one another, even if we make that effort to try to communicate what we feel?
Well, okay, let me throw this question back at you. I mean, so you read Beauvoir's letters.
Yeah.
That was their goal, right? Beauvoir and Sartre, to be completely open with each other.
Oh yeah, for sure. And I think they did. I think they achieved that. I mean, from their letters, which of course, that's a piece of work that's edited in itself, because there was probably some editing going on. It's just in stark contrast to Beauvoir's She Came to Stay, because in She Came to Stay, the Beauvoir character Francois, and so maybe that's an unenlightened Beauvoir, is totally racked with jealousy and self-isolation. But in the letters of Beauvoir, and even Sartre to Beauvoir, they seem very transparent, very happy, joyous even, and they share each other's sorrows with other lovers, and they continually repeat the phrase "we are one," and so yeah, I feel like they achieved that, if you can believe their letters, which I feel like to some extent you can.
One of, Witness to My Life begins with a series of letters from Sartre to someone else, Simone Jolivet, who I guess Sartre was had something of a relationship with. And the Beauvoir letters only begin about 40 pages in or whatever. And they have a very different tone.
Oh, really?
I think so.
Oh, okay. What would you say about that?
I mean,
about the early letters.
Well, I think Sartre is That's funny. The first woman he's writing to is also named Simone Jolivet, and I think she was also. I don't remember who she was. There's so many names in these letters. There's just so many names.
So true.
And I think Sartre is nice. He flatters her. He gives her suggestions about how to live her life. He talks about himself. It reads kind of like, I don't know, he has like a crush on her or whatever.
Okay.
It's that kind of, it's sweet, but it's also like maybe a trifle condescending.
Okay, because he's trying to like capture her, maybe.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
And maybe there's some ambivalence from her, and like he comments on that, but like he calls her my sweet little girl, which I think is meant to be complimentary, and she probably takes it that way. And it's funny because you read some of the same language, and especially I noticed it in No Exit, but maybe that's just because I was reading it after I started reading letters. But then when he gets to Beauvoir, like I find there like, I mean, I just started the Beauvoir section, only a couple letters into it, and like, I don't know, he speaks to her like an equal. He speaks to her like someone he like respects, who he just assumes understands everything he says.
Yeah.
It's less lectury. I don't know. What does that fit with your reading of Beauvoir's letters to him?
Oh yeah, no, they seem like they're happy telling each other that they are equal partners.
Yeah.
And then they speak to each other like that. Yeah, no, it's a total contrast to. So I haven't read the Sartre letters to the other Simone, but it's in total contrast to the letters between Martin Heidegger and Hannah Arendt.
That's funny.
Where it's like, it's just all condescending. It's a weird codependent like relationship. I don't know. It's so weird.
I don't.
Yeah, it's almost cringy. I don't know.
Really? Where did you read those?
It's in I don't know. It's just this book that's out of print that has their letters. It has like both of their letters, except not very many by Hannah Arendt, because he didn't keep hers.
So if we take the kind of, like, if we assume that the Sartre-Beauvoir relationship is their ideal, is Sartre's ideal, which I mean, I don't know if it's a full ideal, but it's at least a partial. I mean, so they are transparent. They do talk to each other. I'm not sure we don't know if they discuss. I mean, maybe it's clear. Maybe I'll get further in and it'll be clear to me if they discuss. But, like, they definitely aren't closed off the way Mathieu is.
Right.
Or Marcelle. So clearly, I guess I'm just thinking that even from Sartre's perspective, Mathieu and Marcelle are not fulfilling a good relationship at all.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's a really good point to like compare. And I did find in one of the letters, actually, going back to letters again, when Sartre is talking about Marcelle, Sartre says that one of his problems that he has, or the problems that he sees the book having, is that Mathieu, okay, so this is the quote, that Mathieu isn't interested enough in Marcelle, that a reader doesn't feel strongly enough that he's fond of her. And to show that it's not enough to make Marcelle more interesting, he himself must seem more taken with her. I'll work on it. Marcelle must be, and this is, I think, the important part, Marcelle must be the symbol of that whole life of intellectual and moral comfort where he isn't free. So, like, to me, that quote, like, indicates that this couple in L'Âge de Raison between Mathieu and Marcelle, they're like not meant to be together. They're on two different trajectories, whereas Sartre and Beauvoir, like, they're just like their desires and their lifestyles and their goals and their philosophies like match up.
So, what is that in? Is that in Quiet Moments in a War or Witness My Life?
That's in Quiet Moments on page 137. Oh yeah, I forgot you have the book.
Yeah, you should send me those screenshots when you see those. That'd be really great.
Okay, yeah.
Let me see if I can. Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, I do think Marcelle. That does make sense. So Marcelle is meant to be kind of a bougie. One sec. Right. I now got my copy.
Oh, great.
What page is it on?
It's on 137. It's at the very end of that letter, before the next letter starts.
Man, okay. Yeah. Yeah, so, I mean, so he's talking about what Marcelle symbolizes to Mathieu, right?
Yes, yeah.
Yes, I see. Right. Yeah, and I mean, yes, I agree, right? That makes a lot of sense. Because, and that's why Mathieu really spends the whole book trying not to be tied down to Marcelle.
Yeah, or maybe Mathieu is not being fully honest or in good faith with Marcelle, because he does, at some level, want to maintain the relationship that they have, but he would have to confront the fact that Marcelle is not actually a good match, because she's either changed or has just always been, like, in a different direction than he has. You know, because that would mean that he would have to confront that they want two different things and they couldn't be together. And he, on some level, likes the somewhat loose connection he has to her.
Yeah, I mean, that's his biggest bad faith moment, is that he is, right, he doesn't want to change his life. He doesn't want to face up either committing to Marcelle or committing or rejecting Marcelle.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he doesn't want to commit, but I guess what Sartre's saying here is it's not just he doesn't want to commit to Marcelle kind of for no reason whatsoever, but he doesn't want to commit to Marcelle because she represents this intellectual and moral comfort.
Right. Yeah. So he doesn't want to lose himself into this comfortable existence where he no longer reflects or keeps on top of his freedom, which translates to his choices and like the existential angst, I guess, that accompanies.
Sartre has, like, you know, in one of the essays in what's it called? We've Only This Life to Live.
Oh yeah.
Is I don't know what it's called, but it's reflecting on the French resistance during World War II.
Oh, okay.
And I mean, it's written in like 1946, and so, you know, it's a little puff piecey. It's like a puff, or is that the right? I don't know, whatever. But I do think that so for Sartre, at least in that essay, he argues that the French were ironically more free under the Nazis rather than less free, because the danger and the constant threat made them aware of the fragility of life and the let me think. I'm not quite trying to put it. Raise to awareness the importance of, you know, facing the situation now and committing to projects right now, because you could die at any moment. Did that make sense?
Yeah, no, I love that quote because I guess it was so controversial that he would like say anything positive about that. But yeah, he said that if people even had a thought of their own, that was rebellious. You know, that was a chance of freedom. So it made every single decision and act, you know, have this tremendous weight.
Right. And so, you know, when he's talking about the intellectual and moral comfort that Marcelle symbolizes to Mathieu, I think for Sartre, he's suggesting that, you know, that intellectual and moral comfort is a sign of a lack of freedom.
Right. Yeah, or that it may distract you.
Sure.
You could get lost in it, like, you know, you're too blissfully ignorant, you're too complacent.
Yeah. Yeah, you become complacent instead of, right, yeah, and I think that's, yes, exactly.
But I just wonder, like, why can't you be both? Why can't you enjoy, like, does it always have to be such a struggle? I'm just disagreeing with Sartre, I guess.
I think that's a fair point. Yeah.
Because honestly, and going back to the letters again, when Sartre is talking, I mean, I don't know what you think and what you've read of the letters, but Sartre seems like very like happy-go-lucky. Like, I mean, maybe that's like not
the
best stage, but he seems like he always talks about in the letters that I'm reading in the quiet moments in the 1940 that he's like, oh, I had such a poetic moment, and I love the cold. I'm like embracing the pain, and he's just like, both he and Beauvoir are just like in love with life almost. Like the only angst they have comes from the drama from the inappropriate relationships that they try to like connect with and maintain. You know, just their polyamory basically gives them angst, but that's just because they like can't keep the peace for very long because of various jealousies and things like that. But otherwise, like, they seem like to be in a sweet spot of flow consistently.
Yeah, that's ironic.
It's like, why don't they let their characters be that? But I don't know. I guess it's, you know, that's not what
I mean, to what extent though? That's interesting. And I mean, you're further along in the letters than I am. They did see themselves as resisting certain bourgeois tendencies. right?
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, they seem kind of not a big deal from my perspective, but I mean, the inappropriate relationships were at least partially their way of kind of challenging that. Am I wrong? I mean, or at least that they saw it that way?
Right. Well, yeah, I mean, I don't know. I guess I never asked myself that. It always just seemed as if, I don't know, I guess I was just assuming that they had a desire to have those relationships, but rather than it being like an intellectual kind of decision. But yeah, you're right. I mean, because now that you say that, I'm kind of thinking about their other conflicts as well. Like Beauvoir often comments in the interviews that I see of her on YouTube that, you know, that she's not well liked in various feminist circles, and she kind of, I don't know, is resigned, but also maybe doesn't like the fact that there's so much resistance. So maybe it's just they just don't talk about everything in their letters that could be a source of strife or angst.
I mean, it is interesting because they were incredibly successful, like ridiculously successful.
Yeah.
Like they did not live by any stretch of the imagination hard lives.
No, not once the money started coming in from lectures and things like that. They had for a couple of decades, they had a very, very hard life financially.
Right.
Like, they didn't have any money. But yeah, I mean, Beauvoir talks about like shopping and buying expensive coats and things like that. So, and they're just traveling, so they have the money to, you know, not work for a year or whatever. I guess they're still working, but they're enjoying their adventures.
Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting actually, because I mean, you know, Merleau-Ponty, who I studied for a while, like, you know, he was a frenemy of theirs. Like they went to school together, and Beauvoir probably had a relationship with him at some point, like in her early 20s. But like, you know, Merleau-Ponty was an academic, and you know, that's what he spent his whole life doing, teaching, and writing, and like, you know, Sartre and Beauvoir did not have to. I mean, Beauvoir was banned, but Sartre could not, you know, didn't need to be an academic. You know, he didn't have to work the 9 to 5, which, you know, academics don't strictly do, but he didn't have to teach. He didn't have to, like, be a professor, because his books were so successful and because the lecture money was so. I mean, in that sense, they were very, very nice lives. I mean, and Merleau-Ponty was very successful, but it wasn't like he could give that up and just go on the lecture circuit.
Right. Yeah, that's true. They kind of made it.
Yeah.
They were like they found the golden ticket that a lot of academics, like myself included, like would love that kind of freedom to eventually be at the place where, you know, you're publishing and you're lecturing and you can kind of have your own schedule, because being an academic itself can be kind of difficult, you know, I mean, because you have to teach so many classes.
Yep.
And it would be great to teach just like one class a semester and have that be like the most beautiful, amazing class, and like,
and teach your research only and not have to worry about, you know, undergraduate requirements or whatever. Like.
Right. Yeah. You don't have to be, you're less of a slave, you know, it's not like publish or perish. Like they just, like everything they wrote was, I guess, gold, and they had their own like journal, and yeah, I don't know. I mean, they certainly, like, in many ways, their aspects of their lives are like to be idolized and admired by intellectuals.
So do you think, I mean, there's a real danger in like okay, so like, I mean, are they just hypocrites then?
Like who?
I guess Sartre. I mean, I don't know enough about Beauvoir. You know, I mean, is it just... I moved really straight from the book, but I mean, is there kind of condemning of bourgeois culture and their praise of the, you know, the resistance during the Nazi occupation, Vichy France? Was that like... I don't know, is it...
Okay, I see what you're saying.
because that's like an easy leap to make. I'm not saying we should make it. That's an easy leap to make. An easy step.
Right. Well,
maybe it doesn't matter. Maybe we should just focus on their philosophy and not worry so much about their lives.
Yeah, that could be. I mean, it's hard to know, right? I mean, it depends, what exactly you need for the bourgeois life. Like, I think for them, it was very much being bourgeois was staying in one place, doing like all the traditional things, like having a respectable job, having a respectable family, like getting married, having kids. So I think how maybe they would define the bourgeois that they wanted to stay away from might be like slightly, like there might be different interpretations of what that would mean. Like for them, it didn't mean that they couldn't enjoy material or sensual things or couldn't travel. Like they were against like the tradition, and that's what they saw that was problematic.
So I think that's interesting. That makes a lot of sense. First of all, it right. So you can still see it. So the tension. It's more about the question of the struggle. Like you said something like, does it really have to be that hard? Like, do we really only encounter freedom or authenticity, I should say, like when we're faced with death at every possible moment, like when every choice is made against, is made knowing that it could lead to one's death. And I take it like, yeah, right.
I mean, I guess just not every.
My thought. Go. Yeah.
No, I mean, I think that's good. No, I think that you're right. And this conversation kind of helped me maybe see that I don't have to take intellectual and moral comfort so, like, literally, because, like, I don't know, because Beauvoir and Sartre had a particular. I mean, the thing is that Sartre and Beauvoir just like naturally had an inclination for what went against society. And so, like, can we blame, though, people like Marcelle, who may just have a natural inclination for whatever happens to be the dominant bourgeois rewarded kind of lifestyle? Like, some people just, like, they're not trying to conform out of bad faith. They just really are well suited to the dominant threads and themes of their society and historical time.
I mean, now you're sounding dangerously like Zola.
Oh, no. Well, I mean, okay, I don't know what to say to that. I haven't read Zola, so.
Well, you know what I mean, though, right? Like, natural inclinations.
I mean, I'm not saying that those natural inclinations cannot be changed. They might have, we might have just allowed ourselves to grow into, I don't know. I mean, do natural inclinations have to be deterministic? I mean, it's the difference between, like, different tastes. Like, can I blame myself for liking strawberry ice cream? And that's the majority of what my culture, like, you can't find chocolate. So I'm not railing against and being an activist for chocolate ice cream because I already like strawberry, I mean, I can see the people who are like suffering because they hate strawberry and they want chocolate and they have to go to another country to have chocolate. Like, it's that kind of a thing. Like, can you blame the people who just like what is dominant?
Yeah, that's fair. Fair response.
Thank you.
Sorry, I think I got lost. I mean, yeah, I don't know.
Is it okay? So I think my point is that I think that it's not fair that Sartre and bourgeois are congratulating themselves for just being naturally uninclined to what they see as the dominant kind of restrictive pressures on society. They just aren't those type of people. But can you reward yourself? Like, because you were asking if they're hypocrites, and I don't necessarily think they're hypocrites, but maybe they're, and I don't even necessarily think that they're like unfairly like looking at themselves, but I guess you could make the argument that they are unfairly celebrating their own inclinations when it's just an inclination that is neutrally the same as any others. But I mean, I think Sartre would, like, I don't know, he doesn't place value. I'm like, he just wants you to make decisions and be in freedom. He doesn't want you to conform. They don't want you to conform to what they, are fighting for, or do they? Are they just fighting for? I don't know.
I think it's an interesting question. I mean, there is one value. I mean, I don't know if you finished Existentialism to Humanism, but there's only one value, and that value is freedom.
Right. Yeah. So I mean, I don't know. So I don't necessarily.
I think it's a good question. Like, I mean, if I'm understanding you correctly, I mean, Sartre is worried that, or Sartre thinks, if I understand him correctly, that most people live in bad faith,
right?
And most people in bourgeois society kind of encourages people to live in bad faith, because it's, instead of facing up to their freedom, instead of making choices knowing that every choice death is on the line, people just kind of go about their lives, and they lie to themselves about their freedom, or they lie to themselves by denying their freedom. They lie to themselves about death always being on the line.
Yes. Okay. Thank you. That brings us back. Yeah. So when I was kind of making a case for Marcelle and asking, like, can we blame her? If she is one who just is naturally inclined to what bourgeois society puts pressure on us to be, then that's an exception. But I think you're on the right track to, like, helping us figure out the point of this conversation, or where we need to land, because most people are not. If Marcelle is that, or if person A, B, and C is that, that's not most people. Like you said, most people are in bad faith, and they're lying to themselves, trying to convince themselves and others that they're happy conforming when they're actually not. And they only need to reflect on that to be in distress and be in that place, that sweet spot that Sartre wants us to be in, and like in the space where we need to make a decision and make a choice that might not conform. Yeah, I think you got it. Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah. All right.
That was 2 pages. No, I think it's. I think you're right to raise the question of Marcelle, though. Like, she's very important to the plot, but she doesn't. We don't get a lot from her perspective.
Yeah. Yeah, because just because Mathieu isn't, like, he would be in bad faith if he would be in trouble if he just like submitted to the intellectual and moral comfort where he isn't free, which is Marcelle. It doesn't mean Marcelle is in bad faith for being Marcelle.
That's true. I mean, my tendency is to, I do think she's probably in bad faith. I'm not sure how. Why do I think she's in bad faith? I'm not sure.
I mean, I think she's in bad faith only because she wants to be with Mathieu and she wants to align with him, or she wants him to join her. but I don't think she's in bad faith with like wanting her kid.
I mean, I think that I think is true. That I agree with. Yes,
okay.
I don't think she's in bad faith for wanting a kid. Yes. I guess I do think I think I appreciate that you're trying to kind of rescue bourgeois values. Because, like, I'm very bourgeois. And I'm drinking Starbucks right now. But, I don't know. Maybe that's just something to keep in mind then. I'm not sure. Yeah. I mean, I guess I'm just not sure Marcelle is, like, portrayed very nicely, if you know what I mean. Like, she just seems kind of dumpy and, like, kind of pathetic. Don't you think? Or am I?
Yeah, no, I agree. I totally agree with you. And I think she's just, but I mean, for Sartre, I think Marcelle is kind of like maybe even collateral damage, because he's most interested in Mathieu. He wants to form Marcelle to be an appropriate, like, I guess, obstacle or something, or temptation for his main character, Mathieu.
And like, I mean, yeah, I hate to say it, but like she's a temptation. Yeah, exactly. And on the other hand, you also have Daniel, who we didn't talk about much today, who,
right,
is going to marry Marcelle, I think.
Right. I mean, yeah.
Like, it's going to be co-companion. Like, that is so sad. I mean, Marcelle's going to be married, or at least in a relationship with someone who's gay, who's using her to punish himself. Because he can't be in a relationship with a man.
Right. Yeah. So Marcelle is also, a temptation for Daniel as well, or like what we agree on, our second main character. So yeah. So Marcelle isn't, she isn't as much a concern to Sartre, I think, as Daniel and Mathieu are.
I agree.
Yeah.
Which is kind of sad.
Yeah, but I mean, every character can't be the main character,
that's
right?
No, you're right. You're absolutely right.
Yeah. So anyway, I think we should maybe pause here, stop here, just like, I don't know. But hey, we got through the second section of chapter 8.
That's true. I mean, I think it's nice that we each managed to use each of these sections to talk about, like, all of Sartre's philosophy, if anything.
Yeah. Like, yeah, I mean, it's definitely, like, it's productive for me, for sure. It's
same for me.
Helping, remind myself. And, I'm still making it through being in nothingness. And, yeah. So, and also that article that you gave me, I'm going through it really slowly, but I just got on the part, the article of self-consciousness that you posted. I just got to section 4.1, Sartre on the non-thetic character of self-consciousness, because, I was trying to figure out what non-thetic even means. So, yeah, I'll let you know. But this article is not the easiest for me to get through, so I'm reading it, like, really slowly.
No, it's incredibly difficult. It's one of the hardest articles I've ever read. So, yeah, I'm not sure I fully understand it, or have totally followed it. It covers so many different philosophers, and it's just fascinating.
Yeah, no, it's really good. And I mean, I'm also kind of like, I'm trying to write a paper about Wittgenstein, so it's cool. Great that this like came from a book about Wittgenstein. So that was really helpful. It's helping me learn understand him. But
Narbu is my hero. He has written a lot of stuff on Wittgenstein too, and so.
Oh really?
Yeah.
Oh wow. Okay, that's cool. I love that. All right. Well, Dave, and I think we have Winter. Did you want to? We'll pause, or we'll stop right here and let you go ahead and ask questions or make statements or join the conversation. Just ask to be a speaker if you have anything you want to say.
I wish Apple hadn't bailed. I'd be curious to hear her take.
I know, yeah, because she's really into bourgeois.
Yeah.
Yeah, and existentialism.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Dave has requested. There you go. Dave, welcome. He's connecting.
Yeah. I think, Dave, your mic is on mute. Yeah.
There you go.
So I just want to, I've caught up with reading a little bit in the book. I just want to say Mathieu is one of the most infuriating characters I've ever read in my life. I just want to grab him and shake him and say, just start talking to people, say what you mean to people. Because I think he could do a communications course. I think if he talks to Marcelle a little bit, like there's that scene, I think it comes later than chapter 8, where he's in the club with Rich and Boris, and he just kind of loses himself and thinks, it's okay, I'm just going to marry Marcelle. And that's what's going to have to happen. And it's like he could help himself not have so much angst in his own mind if he just had that conversation with her and figured out what she wanted. He's just decided what she wanted, and I dislike him for that. But something I thought was interesting is that he just seems like he doesn't face up to his to all the things. He makes a decision and that's it. He doesn't really consider it then beyond that. Looking at like this historical time in the 30s and 40s in all over the world, pretty much, the Communist Party, like being a member of the Communist Party was like a social thing, and people use Communist Party and Nazi Party, which were not the same thing, not always the same. And so people would, like particularly highly educated academic people, would go to Communist Party meetups and things and be discussing various things. It seems like Mathieu at some point went to these, but then he just couldn't talk about how he really felt, despite being obviously far left. And it's another thing, like he needs to sit down and talk to somebody about how he really feels and just be like, I don't want to be a communist. So yeah, just my thoughts. I just think he really needs to discuss his thoughts about his fellow characters. I also think Sartre in this book, I mean, I think I said to you, like his female characters deserve so much better. Not one of them is treated fairly, I don't think. I think maybe Lola becomes stronger as we go, but yeah, I didn't like the treatment of any of them so far. So I know I'm not finished yet, but so maybe they all get redeemed. But it just seems to me like Mathieu is the main character, needs to be shaken a little bit.
Yeah, no, that's really interesting. I mean, I think it can be frustrating that Mathieu he's also a pawn for Sartre, because Mathieu is, his character is an expose for, I think, for, his philosophy and being a nothingness. And so he's in this kind of tricky state. But it's also, maybe kind of unnerving reading about a character who just stays constantly in his own head and yet is engaging with others, but never really gets out of his head. But thirdly, and then I'll give it over to Colin, but yeah, I think it would, I bet there has been like some feminist literature on this novel saying just that. So I think that's from my perspective, I think that's pretty valid. Colin, do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree with Dave. Yeah, I think, one thing we've only touched on is just from like a purely reading standpoint, from the standpoint of reading it. What really jumps out is how much the characters think. Like, so much of the book is Mathieu or Daniel's reflecting on their life and their situation. Like, I would guess something like 80% of the book is inner monologue.
Yeah. Yes.
And not talking and not communication. Yeah, and I think maybe that's meant to be like, so they don't communicate with each other. They just think about each other and they make decisions based on that. But I mean, like Daniel and Marcelle, I mean, they don't, like Daniel has this whole thought about how he's going to manipulate Marcelle to get back at Mathieu, and he does all that, and he never talks to Marcelle about it. It's all in his head. They're relentlessly self-analytical.
Yes, that's a good way of putting it.
I don't know whether Sartre wants us to be relentlessly self-analytical, but that's definitely what his characters are like in this.
Yeah, I mean, it's one way of showing how difficult acting on your freedom is. You know?
Yeah. I mean, do you think that, are they, is the relentless self-analysis getting in the way of their freedom?
I mean, that is a very good question for this novel. Yeah, I mean, because it's one part of it, right? And there's a part in existentialism as a humanism where he says, we have demonstrated that it is not only oneself that one discovers in the cogito, but also the existence of others. He realizes that he cannot be anything in the sense in which we say someone is spiritual, cruel, or jealous unless others acknowledge him as such. I cannot discover any truth whatsoever about myself except through the mediation of another. The other is essential to my existence as well as to the knowledge of myself. So, I mean, Sartre clearly, or there, as I'm reading it at least, seems to think there is this essential aspect of one's freedom to include the other. But because that is not necessarily an element of this novel, I'm not sure is a condemnation of just being self-analytical. I think that, or I wonder if we can look at L'Âge de Raison and its obsession with, or its preoccupation with self-analysis as just trying to hone in to that aspect of one's existential angst that we have to situate ourselves appropriately to. Like it does leave out the other aspect of really engaging with the other and having the other help your freedom. But I don't necessarily think that it's like, and I don't know, I don't think that's what you're saying, but I just want to say that I don't think it's necessarily like that is the statement. I don't know. I mean, it could be, but does that make sense?
I'm not sure I followed, actually. Sorry.
Okay. So your question was, do you think that the over self-analyzation is something that keeps us from our freedom?
Yeah.
I think I would answer like yes and no. Like, I think there is a collective aspect of our freedom that's necessary, but I don't think that is that self-analysis, over self-analysis keeping us from our freedom. I don't think, and I don't know why I think this, but maybe because I just want to like redeem the novel.
Are you there?
Yeah, sorry. That was like I got a call or something and I had to click out of it. I don't think that is a message of the novel. I would agree with that, but I don't think it's a message of the novel. But I don't know why I think that.
I mean, it could be a message, though. I mean, we've talked a bunch how Mathieu is not. I'm just suggesting this. I'm not committed. I'm free associating it. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I do think so. It could be a message because I mean, Mathieu. We've talked a bunch how Mathieu is not authentic. We that's just a fact. He's not authentic. He won't face any. He avoids everything. He wants to be free, but he, I mean, his whole discussion with his brother. He wants to be in a relationship with Marcelle, but he doesn't want to have a baby. He fantasizes about going off and fighting against the fascists, but he doesn't do any of it. He leads a nice middle-class existence, and he fancies himself a revolutionary. It is possible that like he's confusing thinking with doing. That instead of acting, kind of like how he describes Brunei, honestly, instead of acting, instead of just taking life by the horns and, going to Spain, writing his book or whatever, all he's going to do is agonize about it. All he's going to do is over-intellectualize, like do philosophy in his head. So I guess I'm wondering, maybe, yeah, I don't know. I don't know. Is that a possible reading, do you think?
Yeah, no, I definitely think it's a possible reading. I'm glad that you're arguing for it, because then I'll like keep it in mind more. I definitely want to think about it. I guess that can be true. I think that I'm kind of stuck on maybe the idea that this character is on the road to freedom. And I know you said you didn't like that translation of the whole like trilogy, but like he's on the road. So I just wonder if what he's doing is justified, his overthinking is justified and necessary as a stage on the road to freedom, and therefore we can't necessarily say that that's what he's doing wrong. I guess that's my resistance. I don't know if...
I see.
Yeah.
I do feel like it was interesting reading. Oh my God, I forget her name. Is Iris Murdoch? Was that who it was?
Yeah, Iris Murdoch.
Yeah, it was interesting. It was definitely interesting reading her take on it, because one thing I got is like it'd be interesting. Reading the whole trilogy, which I don't know. Yeah, it'd be interesting to see where the book goes and how. It's interesting because like if Mathieu and Daniel are both inauthentic, they're both stuck in bad faith. Like it'd be interesting to see if we ever get Sartre's portrayal of an authentic individual, because I do feel like that's kind of what we're bouncing our head against right now.
Right.
Banging our head against a little bit. Maybe I'm wrong.
No, I think that's true. I think that's, yeah, if we can see whatever Sartre in Mathieu, if we can see what Sartre feels like is an authentic individual by the end of this, of like third book, then I think that, that would help, maybe help.
Maybe.
Yeah, me see how to think of it. But I think it's really interesting, is how problematic is the overanalyzation? I think is a question that, I would love to keep in mind.
It's especially tricky, I'll say one more thing, is because it is fascinating. It's the place where Sartre does the philosophy.
Mm-hmm.
In the analysis, I think. Yeah,
right. So is the overanalyzation a necessary, just like literary technique for what he's trying to do?
Right. Yeah. I don't know.
Dave, do you have anything else, or do you want to respond to what our response is?
I think this is fascinating. I just want to listen to more and more you guys talk about the philosophy side of things that I haven't read up on. I like it. I like where you're going with it. It sounds great. It makes it so much more interesting to have this aspect. Because I've been reading the book the last week and a half or so, or however long. I know it does feel like a long time because I'm so angry with Mathieu all the time. I'm like, jeez. But having these conversations beforehand and later, it's really interesting to me as someone who hasn't read a lot of philosophy. Thinking about Sartre, writing these and kind of put his philosophy into the books and stuff. And when I started the book, I went back and started it after about 50 pages again, because I was like, I'm not reading this right. So now that I'm a little bit further, I'm almost finished. I think it's it's really helpful to have both of we discuss things in this way. And now tomorrow when I go back to read it, I'm going to have new thoughts, and that's when I can maybe at the next spaces. But I mean, for now, I mean, I just think, yeah, it just seems so. I don't know what to add to it, but it's really interesting, and it's a big departure from other stuff I've been reading. So yeah, just thanks for both of you putting in such interesting.
Oh, well, thanks. I mean, that's really kind of you to say, and very generous. So I really appreciate that, and always your presence as well. Well, all right, Colin. Anything else you want to say? Maybe we should think about ending it here. And next time, I guess we'll go on to, I think it starts on page 148 or something around there, where Boris and Brunei. And if you want to start us off with that or do that section.
That sounds great. Yeah.
Okay.
Wonderful.
Cool. All right. Any last words, Colin?
No, that's great. This is really great.
Okay, yeah, thank you so much for meeting again, and I'm sorry that I was stressed out last week. I don't know, school's starting again, so I don't know, lots of stuff, but I'm so glad that we got to do this today, and I guess we'll meet back in a couple weeks, as always.
Awesome.
Okay, great. All right, well, thanks, everyone. This will be up on my YouTube channel eventually, and thanks so much, Dave, for staying up Irish time and listening and discussing. And, yeah, in 2 weeks, everyone, so thank you.
Thanks, Elizabeth.
Okay, thanks, Colin. Bye.
Bye.